with the, and that is having to do with Gitmo. I know people are tired of hearing, several of us, and probably more tired of hearing me talk about Gitmo than anybody else. But I think we're about to make a mistake. The administration making the demand that we're to close Gitmo. I've stood on the floor of this Senate many times and talked about my experiences down there. The fact that anyone who wants to close Gitmo, if you ask them why, they'll say, well, for some reason, people associate that with the types of torture that allegedly went on in Abu Ghraib and all that. This has nothing to do with that. And there's not been a documented case of waterboarding at Gitmo. It's a state-of-the-art type of prison. It's one that, when President Obama was talking about the 17 locations in America where we could take these terrorists and relocate them from Gitmo to America, and one of those happened to be Fort Sill in my state of Oklahoma. And so I went down to Fort Sill, and there was the lady there that was in charge of it was a young major who was in charge of the prison down there where they would put these terrorists. And she said, I don't understand what people are thinking. This young lady, her name was Sergeant Major Carter, that was her name. Sergeant Major Carter said she had 2 tours in Gitmo, and in Gitmo, that's designed for terrorists. They have a court system there that we can do tribunals. We have 6 classifications of security in Gitmo. Gitmo is one of the few good deals the government has. We've had it since 1903. And I've told the presiding officer this before. We only pay $4,000 a year. You got a better deal than that anywhere in government? There isn't one. Well, I'd have to say that the terrorists are still at war with us. The United States is legally entitled to capture and to hold enemies and fighters in hostilities. We detain terrorists and their supporters to prevent them from returning to the battlefield, saving the lives of our servicemen and women on the front lines and lives of civilians who are innocent victims over these extremists. I've spent a lot of time over there. I'm very familiar with some of the terrorists, and they're really bad people. These are people who want to kill everybody who's listening right now. That's their mission in life. We've had about 800 suspected al-Qaeda and Taliban terrorists that have been sent to Gitmo since 2001, since 9/11. Terrorists, and I'm talking about people who are really bad. I was there the other day, and I looked through there, and we saw Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He's the guy, he was the architect of 9/11. That's the kind of people that are down there. The guy that was the explosive trainer for 9/11. The assassination of the Northern Alliance leader Massoud, and on the al-Qaeda organization's use of mines, a terrorist financier who provided the detailed information for Osama bin Laden's front companies, the Taliban fighter linked to al-Qaeda that was connected with the 1998 East Africa embassy bombings. You remember that? That was in Tanzania and in Kenya. Down there, we also have had the al-Qaeda explosive trainer who designed the prototype shoe bomb for destroying airplanes, as well as a magnetic mine for attacking ships. Now, these are people, unlike the types of prisoners we've had in the war. You look back during the World War II, you look back during any of our wars, we have people who are soldiers fighting for their countries. That's not this case. These people are not fighting for a country. They're fighting for a cause, and their cause is to destroy us. So today we've had over 540 have been transferred or released, leaving approximately 230 at Gitmo. Now, these detainees include members of al-Qaeda and related terrorist organization, planners of the major terrorist attacks worldwide, to include 9/11. And these are the type of people who are down there. The intelligence gained from detainees at Gitmo has helped the United States and has helped the Allies identify, exploit, and disrupt terrorist operations worldwide. We have a number of terrorist attacks that we know. For a long time, they were classified, and most of them are no longer classified. In 2007, the Senate voted 94-3 on a non-binding resolution to block detainees from being transferred to the United States, declaring, quote, detainees housed at Guantanamo should not be released into American society, nor should they be transferred stateside into facilities in American communities and neighborhoods. On the 20th of May of 2009, the Senate voted 90-6 on a bipartisan amendment. This is an amendment by myself and Senator Inhofe, that would prohibit the funding for the transfer of Gitmo detainees. Unfortunately, the Supplemental Appropriation Conference report deleted that provision, allowing detainees to be transferred to the United States for trials. Let's keep in mind, the danger there is, if you put them into our federal system, I can speak this way because I'm not an attorney, so I can stand back and cite the obvious. If you do that, then the rules of evidence are different. There are a lot of these guys that are picked up. Sure, even now they're talking about reading Miranda rights. You have the right to keep silent, and it just blows my mind when I think about this. But when this is going on right now, and we have the opportunity to get these people and to extract information from them, and then thinking about the idea of trying them in the federal court system, where if they cannot get a conviction, and many times they couldn't only for one reason, that is the rules of evidence are different, and when they were captured, they went by the rules of evidence for tribunals, military tribunals. And so we could have some of these that would be turned free, and many of them in the United States. The recent polls have showed that a majority of Americans opposing closing Gitmo and are opposed to moving the detainees to the United States. By a margin of 2-to-1, that's huge in polling. By a margin of 2-to-1, those surveyed said that Guantanamo should not be closed, and by more than 3-to-1, they opposed moving some of the accused terrorists housed there to prisons in the United States. As I said, one of the prisons that the Obama administration was talking about in the 17 prisons happens to be in my state of Oklahoma. You know, it should be obvious to everyone that if you have 17 locations where we're housing terrorists, that becomes a magnet for terrorism, 17 magnets in the United States. Recently, Fox News poll results were that President Obama made a mistake when he signed the executive order to close Gitmo. 77% of all Americans had stated that was a mistake. Gitmo should not be closed. 60% of all Americans, up to from 53% in April and 45% in January. So you can see the trend lines there. The vast majority of the people, nearly 2/3, are now saying you shouldn't be closing that. Gitmo prisoners should not be transferred into prisons in the United States. 60% of all Americans say that's true. Well, 60% in polling is a huge number, a vast majority. And I would encourage my fellow senators who will be voting before long on a very significant amendment to keep that in mind. Since President Obama announced that he intended to close Gitmo, it has become widely circulated that these detainees could be transferred to American prisoners for prosecution in U.S. criminal courts and potentially released in the United States. And moving detainees to prisons in the United States would require a significant investment of restructuring the existing facilities and costing the taxpayers millions of dollars. Currently, the United States only has one Supermax facility, and it's located in Florence, Colorado. According to the Bureau of Prisons, as of May the 21st, only one bed was not filled at Supermax. So the one place, if you want to give them maximum security to these people, such as Sheikh Mohammed, then you better decide who's going to be in that one bed, because we don't have the capacity. Additionally, the rated capacity of all the high-secured Bureau of Prison facilities at the beginning of this month was 13,448 inmates, while the total prison population for those facilities was approximately 20,000. So what we're talking about is they're already overcrowded, and that's just flat not going to happen. And despite claims by Senator Durbin that the Supermax prisons in the United States are ready to receive Gitmo detainees, the Supermax prisons in the United States are at or above their maximum capacities now. FBI Director Robert Mueller said there is very little the very real possibility that Gitmo detainees will recruit more terrorists from among the federal inmate population and continue the Al-Qaeda operation from inside the walls of prisons. See, that can't happen in Gitmo because they're all the terrorists there. And that's what as how the New York synagogue bombers were recruited in our own prison system. In 2002, an entire wing of a jail in Alexandria, Virginia, was cleared out for the 9/11 20th hijacker, Zacarias Messali. to be housed for his trial, just one detainee. Bringing Gitmo detainees to the United States could also place America and its citizens at risk by inevitably creating a new set of targets for the jihadist terrorists. So Gitmo, on the other hand, is a state-of-the-art prison. I can't find anyone has gone over there, including unfriendly media. Media that was bent on closing Gitmo. Once they go over there and they see it, almost all of them change their mind. It is the state of the art. It provides humane treatment for all detainees. It's fully compliant with the Geneva Convention. Provides treatment and oversight that exceed any maximum security prison in the world. And as attested to by human rights organizations, the Red Cross, the Attorney General Holder, and an independent commission led by Admiral Walsh. This is state of the art. And this is not a place where torture takes place. It is the only facility of its kind in the world that was specifically designed to build and to house and try these types of dangerous detainees. If President Obama ever decides to visit Gitmo, I'm sure he would equally be impressed as everyone else is, including, I might say, Attorney General Holder. He came back and he gave the glowing report on how great this was, and at the same time he said, but the president still wants to close it. So anyway, if you look at the Gitmo situation, there's an average of 2 lawyers for every detainee. There are 127 doctors, nurses. The ratio is 1 to 2 in terms of a health care specialist to take care of these prisons. Here we're talking about health care in this country. Maybe I wouldn't go to Gitmo, they'd be a lot better off. The current treatment and oversight exceeds that of any maximum security prison in the world. And there is also a $12 million expeditionary legal complex. This is very significant, because if you're going to do tribunals, you can't do tribunals in our court system in the United States because they're not set up for that. Obviously, there's some things in testimony that take place that have to be private. You can't have these things go out because that would endanger American lives. This thing was that we spent $12 million on this complex. It's a courtroom at Gitmo to try detainees. And specifically, that's what it's there for. It's the only one of its kind in the world and provides a secure location to secure and to try detainees charged by the federal government. Full access to sensitive and classified information, full access to defense lawyers and protection, full media access by the press. But it is set up to take care of that specific type of an incarcerated individual. Senator Harry Reid, declared in a press conference after my bipartisan Senate amendment was passed that, quote, "we will never allow terrorists to be released in the United States." And I applaud Harry for that, and I hope that he will stay with that, because that's something that the American people just are not going to tolerate. He went on to say that he opposes imprisoning detainees on U.S. soil, saying, quote, and this is Harry Reid, "we don't want them around the United States. I can't make it any more clear than the statement I've given to you. We will never allow terrorists to be released in the United States." Senator Durbin said the feeling was, at this point, we were defending the unknown. We were being asked to defend a plan that hasn't been announced. And I think Senator Durbin was correct then and is correct now. There are lots of questions, very few answers. You know, what is the impact? Let's say we close Gitmo. What is the impact of placing detainees in the U.S. prison system, pre-trial and post-trial? Has an assessment been done to determine the risk of escape as well as potentially creating targets in the U.S. for terrorist attacks? Will Gitmo detainees be segregated from regular prisoner population? Keep in mind now, these guys are trained to recruit. And that would be the garden spot for them to get in the American prison system to recruit people to become terrorists. What facilities exist in the United States that can hold these detainees? We've already talked about that. They've tried to locate some 17 facilities. It's just not going to work. And by the way, the state legislatures in each one of those states that has one of these facilities has passed resolutions or some type of a document saying we don't want them in our states. Now that's what they're saying from the states, and we need to listen to them. You might ask, where would the military commissions be held? At Guantanamo or the United States? Well, obviously, if you close Guantanamo, you lose that facility. And assuming that military commissions, that's tribunals, are held in Guantanamo, where will detainees who are convicted serve their sentences, if not there? Because there is no other place. that has the capability of doing that. So there are all these questions that are, I'm going to submit for the record at the conclusion of my remarks as to questions that have not been answered and what we're going to do with these detainees if we close Gitmo. So despite not having a plan, the administration continues in its quest to empty Gitmo regardless of the cost and the risk. The Obama administration initially talked with a small South Pacific island of Palau, population 20,000, to accept transfer of the group of 17 Chinese Muslims currently at Gitmo called the Uyghurs at a cost of some $200,000. That's $200 million. That's $11.7 million per individual. This ain't a cheap thing that he's talking about doing. The total cost to build Gitmo was only $275,000. And right now, as I said, it's something that's still on lease since 1903 for $4,000 a year. So anyway, according to a lot of the sources, the Wall Street Journal just yesterday had a government official has said that well over 50 detainees have been approved for transfer to other countries, and that negotiations were continuing with Saudi Arabia to take a large group of Yemeni detainees. Attorney General Eric Holder has estimated that more than 50 detainees may end up on trial by U.S. authorities. This news comes as more and more Americans are growing opposed to the closure of Gitmo, placing them unnecessarily at risk in order to satisfy political goals. So I just think that we need to really stop, sit back, and take a deep breath, and look at some of the things that are going on today. The idea that we would have Miranda rights for terrorists, people who have killed Americans, is just pretty outrageous. But anyway, finally on June 9th, the Obama administration again went against the will of the Congress and the American people by transferring the first Gitmo detainee to the United States for his trial in New York City. Aman Galani is indicted for the 1998 Al-Qaeda U.S. Embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania that killed more than 224 people, including 12 Americans. Galani was later captured in Pakistan in 2004 while working for Al-Qaeda, preparing false documents and working in their efforts. Intelligence showed that he met both bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Afghanistan and remained a close associate with Al-Qaeda until his capture in 2004. Now, this bona fide terrorist will have the privileges of a United States civilian court trial in the United States. I think that's New York is where that's going to be. To me, this is inconceivable that could happen. The press reported that Gailani was smiling when the New York read charges to him. Despite the Obama administration's intentions, they will find themselves in a position where they cannot either try or safely transfer or release Gitmo detainees. As of May of 2009, 74 transferred, released detainees have returned to the fight. 74. These are the ones that we now know. These are the ones we captured again. We know that they've returned to the fight. How many more are there out there? You release these people, and they go right back to their practice of killing Americans. Former Guantanamo Bay inmate Zakir, also known as Abdullah Rasool, is leading the fight against the U.S. Marines in the Helmand province of Afghanistan. He surrendered in North Afghanistan in 2001, was transferred to Gitmo in 2006, then was released, and he's out there killing Marines today. So that's what is happening currently. There is no alternative to Gitmo. And I go through all of this not to be disagreeable with anyone, except just to say that there is an answer. And there's only one answer. Today we are considering the Defense Authorization Bill. I have an amendment to that bill. I now have, just in a matter of 3 hours, I have 22 co-sponsors. This is an amendment number 15, just a minute here because I do want to get the right number. 1559, amendment number 1559 to the Defense Authorization Bill, Senate Bill 1390, amendment 1559. Now this does something very simple. I like simple bills because they can't be misunderstood. They're not like the health insurance bill that's out there of over 1,000 pages that no one's read. They're not like the cap and trade bill that passed the House with no one reading it over 1,000 pages. This is just 2 pages, that's all. So it's easy to read. Let me tell you what it says. It says the elimination. Okay. I'm wrong. It's one page. It's 1559, and it says this. The amendment introduced by Senator Inhofe, that's me, at the end of Section 1059, prohibits on transfer of Guantanamo detainees. No department or agency of the United States may, number one, transfer any detainee of the United States housed at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay in Cuba to any facility in the United States or its territories. That's number one. Number two, no, we cannot construct, improve, modify, or otherwise enhance any facility in the United States or its territories for the purpose of housing any detainee described in paragraph 1. And number three, we cannot permanently or temporarily house or otherwise incarcerate any detainee described in paragraph 1. So that's a very simple solution. It's all in 3 sentences on 1 page. And I have a feeling there are going to be many people who know that we're on the right side of this issue, know that the American people are overwhelmingly, by more than 2 to 1, in support of an amendment like this, are going to offer some amendment full of loopholes that will still allow them to close it. It'll sound good, but this is the only one out there. So for anyone, I say to my colleagues, if your interest is to really do something about keeping Gitmo open, there's only one vehicle out there, and we're on it right now, the Defense Authorization Bill, and that's Amendment number 1559. And all it does is say that it prohibits us from transferring any detainee from Gitmo to any facility in the United States of America or its territories. It prohibits us from constructing, improving, modifying, or otherwise enhance any facility in the United States or its territories for the purpose of housing any detainee described in paragraph 1 above. That's the terrorists. And number 3, it prohibits us from permanently or temporarily housing or otherwise incarcerating any detainee described in paragraph 1 in the United States or its territories. Period. That's all it does. So I would just say to those individuals, to those 2/3 of the people in America, there is a vehicle now that we can use to make sure that that facility, one of the really true state-of-the-art resources that we have in this country, by keeping it open and keeping those detainees, those terrorists out of America. If you want to keep them out of America, this is the way to do it. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.